Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 108 of the CUInsight Experience. This episode is brought to you by our friends at PSCU. We love having them as a sponsor to help us get to do what we do. As the nation's premier payments CUSO, the folks at PSCU proudly support the success of more than 1,500 credit unions. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and I'm lucky enough to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community, and I get to bring them to you. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Tonita Webb. Tonita is the CEO of Verity Credit Union. So I have to tell you, this conversation was an absolute blast. I had to skip questions I normally ask because so many new ones came up during the conversation, and then we actually just continued to talk after we stopped recording for quite some time. So I could have talked all afternoon to Tonita, but I know you all only have so much time and bandwidth to commit to listening. So I respect that and tried to do my part. We talked about what it was like for Tonita to get the call that she was the next CEO of Verity Credit Union, her path from the military to the CEO chair in credit unions, and what that was like along the way. We also talked about her passion for serving the underserved and focusing on making credit unions and lending practices specifically more inclusive for everyone, and how her personal journey has fueled that passion throughout her career. And we also talked about, and this was so fun and interesting for me, was balancing that career and career success with a full life outside of work as a mother of four and wife. There was just so much good in this episode. Like I said in the start, I wish this conversation would have went on longer. That's always a good sign. We wrapped up the show with some rapid fire questions as always. Who is that person that came to mind when Tonita hears the word success? What book should it be on all of our reading list, quite honestly? We even talked about the fancy toaster her husband recently bought. So I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed having this conversation. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Tonita Webb. Enjoy. Tonita, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I have to start with congratulations. Recently, you were named the CEO of Verity Credit Union. I know I'm not the only person out there who'll be listening who's excited for you and was very just geeked up when we saw the announcement. So congrats. Thank
you. I appreciate it.
I have to ask you a personal question. When Chairman Harper was on the show recently, I asked him about it too. You get the call. It's your job. My guess is this was something you really wanted. How did it feel personally? What was it like when you got the message that you would be the next CEO of the credit union?
I have to tell you, I live the experience I'm in type of person. So it would make sense that I'm anticipating a call to tell me one way or another. No, I got the call and I'm thinking, did they call the right person? Is it me? I was in the middle of working out and I took the call and I was like, wow, that just happened. And it was such a surreal moment, like out of body experience. Yes, it was me on the phone. Yes, they were talking to me. And then just sheer joy to think about leading such an amazing team that is personally aligned with my value system. So I was just excited after I got over being shocked.
Well, congratulations again. It's amazing. I'd like to move on to a bigger question, and then we're going to kind of circle back towards more your leadership journey, and I'm sure talk a lot more about that purpose and passion that you just mentioned. So, but the big question that I've really been trying to start the show with this year is, last year we all had to pivot. And it was, I will tell you, one of the most beautiful parts about that pivot was this idea that credit unions can't move fast. We can't use that anymore. Right. So, because we sure did. And it was amazing from my blimp level view to watch, a lot of the amazing work that was out there.
Mm-hmm.
When we start to, though, look forward, and you and I were, kind of talking about this before we hit record, for the leaders out there who want to look forward to the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, are there things that you've seen over the past year that you think should stay? Do you have any hacks on like the things where we're like, that worked for the situation we were in, but global pandemics, they don't happen every day, right? Like that maybe we need to get rid of as well. Anything, I guess, that you can think of when you're looking forward over the next few years?
Absolutely. I think life in general was preparing us for this global pandemic. As a parent, myself, wife, community member, I'm always stretched for time. And the thought of having to go sign loan docs or other things, it stressed me out because I don't know that I have the time to do that. Especially we had 4 kids. And at any given moment, we needed to be at somebody's game or practice or something. So I think the need for convenience and technology was already crying out. Then we get into this global pandemic where we can't be face to face and branches and lobbies are having to close down. Technology really screamed at us. And for those institutions who had not moved along, they were forced to your point, and they had to do it quickly. Now we have really trained all our members that you can do things in a quicker way. And so I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we really have to look at technology from a convenience standpoint, not taking the relationship away, not saying we'll never need to be in community or face to face with our members, but how do we give them precious time back in their lives? That is, to me, should be the main focus, well, one of the major focus as we move forward in the next 3 to 5 years.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think of all the ways over the past year that inside and outside of financial services, right? Like the idea that you have to go to the doctor to get a prescription refilled when you can just do a Zoom call or whatever, and then grocery shopping, saving so much time.
Exactly. Yeah, no. I'm in Amazon's back door, and for years I could order cereal and get it in an hour or two, right?
Right. Yeah. But we all come to expect that kind of convenience. It's not, we're not putting that genie back in the bottle. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. 4 kids.
Yes.
CEO. I don't know where I was, or I don't know if it was Jill who was talking about it, but often by the time somebody makes it to that CEO level, many aspiring future leaders almost, we have this vision of what the CEO's life looks like, right? There is this idea of like, if you went home with your CEO, it'd probably look a lot more like your life than it would anybody else's. What would you say for the parents out there? I mean, balancing all the family side of it, but also having you've got the corner office now, a very successful career, right? So any hacks there that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. And I came along where, there was not much flexibility. At this stage of my career, my children are adults. My last one graduated last year. I still have 2 living at home. Thank you. Haven't been successful in getting them out yet, but I'm working on it. My goal as a leader, and has been as a leader, is to give that flexibility to folks coming up after me. Just because I experienced it one way doesn't mean that others. And what I often carried with me, hopefully my kids won't listen to this because my older 2 would say, see, I told you. My younger 2 probably are a bit spoiled because of the guilt I felt in trying to have a career and not being there for them the way I was with my older kid. Yeah. And as I became a leader, I thought, well, why can't folks be there for their children? We have advances in technology. If I can't trust my employees to work at home, then they shouldn't probably work for the organization anyway. So let's put that to bed, right? And why wouldn't they be happier if I'm now affording them the time to go to every game, every practice, and be flexible in their work so that they are meeting the career aspirations that they may have, and being there for their kids. And so for me, that's what it should look like today. I understand for many of us, it didn't look like that. I was telling a group of employees when I had my oldest, my daughter, was still in the military, and I had to be back to work 6 weeks later. There was no negotiation around that. And it was awful. It was awful.
Yeah.
I now know the military has changed a bit, but the workforce was kind of the same, and not,
Absolutely.
it wasn't much different. And so today in 2021, those of us who suffered through that, we should be making ways so that when folks leave work, they can leave it the physical building, or it could be in their home office, and that they enjoy the limited time that they have to be that parent. And that is how I've tried to live my life in the later years of my kids' youth, because early on I didn't have much flexibility.
There wasn't much there. That brings me to an interesting question. And part of it is that idea that at times we do have to be able to, we can be connected 24/7 if we want to. We need to be able to step away. And something I will tell you, as somebody who enjoys change in myself, there were parts of this that were really exciting for me. Like, just getting to try and do new things.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same regard, I got to a point where I was like, wow, if you're always putting out fires, or at least perceive that you are, how do you find the space and the bandwidth to be able to think strategically, right? If you're just thinking about tomorrow or today, even, or this minute, right? How do you find that space? I'm making an assumption here, but there's no way you would have got to where you are today if you weren't a strategic thinker. So, how do you find time to make that space so you can look at things, in that bigger picture?
I had that conversation with myself at one point, because I thought, I'm just putting out fires all the time. And I tend to look at things from, how would I do things at home? Because to manage long-term marriage, 4 kids, is not a small feat, right? And if I'm successful at that, how do I humanize the work I'm doing? And I definitely grew up under that era. You leave your personal life at the door. Well, that's silly. I don't stop being a mom when I walk through the door. I don't stop being a wife when I walk through the door. So how do I blend my tactics in both areas in a professional way, right? And so for me, we're serving people. We're serving humans. How do we humanize our work? And if we're thinking about what the member is going to need from a year, 2, 3, 5 years from now, that has us looking out at the future in the big picture, instead of the member in this second. Not that we don't give this thought, but we can't be consumed by the 5 members who call and complain about waiting too long, right? We want to fix that. Don't hear me. We're going to fix it. But it shouldn't be 5 meetings to talk about that one thing. What we should be talking about is, how do we see the future? Because if we just look at it from our own human advantage, I am no longer, like my grandfather did for me, taking me into a bank or a credit union with a little, what did you call it? Passbook or whatever.
Right?
Yeah. I don't even remember what you call it anymore.
Right.
But that's not who we are. My kids have never had checks. They don't even, everything is Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, whatever. That is how they bank. And if we're not thinking like that in our jobs, which is just the human side of where people are, then we're going to miss it.
Absolutely.
That's what should consume our days, not the fires, like you said.
I love that. That's good stuff right there. So I'm a big believer in this idea that we are kind of shaped by those we surround ourselves with, like that who we choose to be with, right? Who do you surround yourself with, and how have they helped, shape your career and get you to where you are today?
Yeah, that's been a journey for me, coming from a very traditional Southern kind of background, right? And I grew up in Black neighborhoods. I went to a HBCU. So everything surrounding me were people who looked like me. That's what I always navigated towards because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
When I joined the military, that really exposed me to all different types of people, good, bad, and in between, right?
Yeah.
And then it also forced me, because my first duty station was in Berlin, Germany. So I am far away from home. I can't hop in a car and get home or what have you. It just can't happen. So I had to learn how to deal with all this newness that was coming my way. And so in learning how to do that, what I learned is I don't have to always agree with folks, but the different perspectives are helping me, one, educate myself and learn and develop to be a better understanding, just human person. I was going to say leader, but just a human,
Just
right?
a human.
Understanding that everybody's walk in life is different. And what that helped me understand is my walk in life is different. I don't have to believe the narrative that we're a monolithic people and all of our experiences are the same, or that I need to believe this or that because people who look like me or people who are related to me said that's the way it should be. I feel like I was developed uniquely. I had unique experiences, and those experiences helped shape me. So today, I surround myself with all different types of people. Some people I agree with on a lot of things, others not so much, but it's still helpful.
Absolutely. That seems to tie in some to a direction I wanted to take it next. And, one of the things that I have known about you, and then from talking to, some mutual acquaintance of ours like Jill and others, is that you have a passion for, serving the underserved. You mentioned earlier here about, the idea that the members are also people, right? Like, so that idea of, and we all have different experiences, but also diversity, equity, and inclusion in credit unions. And I feel like that ties in some to what you were just talking about now too, that we, are all different. The question that I kick this off with is how do the passions that you have in those areas help guide your vision for the credit union that you're now the CEO of Verity, but also credit unions as a whole, as an industry?
Yeah. So, one, I was one of those people. I grew up in a single parent home in low income housing. My mom had me as a teenager. So, I understand those struggles. And what I understand about the credit union, that is who we're built to be. We're supposed to serve those folks. We're supposed to serve folks who maybe weren't taught how to balance a checking account, who weren't taught tax issues, who weren't taught all the financial things that we know that they're not taught appropriately in school, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we're here for. We're to fill that gap. However, if we don't have representation to speak to how we all perceive the messages from financial institutions, then we're missing our mission. We're not filling our mission. We have to be realistic about our whole financial system. And the reality is the system was built not to serve me. Many
Absolutely.
years ago, I was not the target market. I was
Right.
not. Actually, things like redlining and other things were put in place so I could not be served. Now, that's not anybody's fault today. However, that system is still in place. And we have a responsibility as leaders to break that system. And that's how I see our role in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and why I'm so passionate, because I get it. I'm a long ways down the road of where I started. However, I still have almost like PTSD if I'm going to get a loan or just because of the system that has been in place. We don't forget that. That is, I grew up in a home with my great grandmother, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, who in the height of the discrimination, they experienced it all. And if you think the stories and their experiences didn't impact me in some way, and then being from a low income situation, that there wasn't discrimination there, absolutely it was. And that's not, I'm not, bitter about it. I'm angry enough to want to change it so no one else has to go through it. But we have to have representation.
Absolutely. I remember, and it's a story I think Jill's told before, but when she was named a league president and went to one of her first meetings, there were more people named John than women.
I believe it.
And it was just, so that idea that, it's our responsibility to change that,
Yes.
with each decision.
Yes.
So I thank you for that. I'd love to even talk more about it. So anyways, I do want to ask just again, and this is kind of that personal and professional, and you mentioned earlier that, the two go together. So, you came from a background, from a financial standpoint, your life is much different than what you grew up with, right? And with success, we are afforded luxuries, right? Like I guess you could say, or as somebody who didn't grow up with money also, where that idea that money doesn't buy happiness, I agree with that. But on the other side, it does take away a lot of the stress, right?
Yeah, it does give you a little bit of peace.
When you're not worrying about how you're going to, put food on the table, that's one big stress, But
exactly.
So my question to you is how have you stayed, as far as from a vision standpoint, purpose driven in what you do, even though you may not have the same struggles today that you did in the past, or that member, that underserved member, doesn't have when they walk in the door. So how do you stay focused on that purpose?
I haven't forgotten my mom's struggles. And, my mom, it wasn't that she didn't want to work. She absolutely, we're all workaholics in our family. But my mom struggled with lupus. She got diagnosed with lupus when I was 5 years old. And she was in and out of the hospital my whole life. And she would go to work and just get sick. And sometimes that would mean a year in the hospital. And my siblings and I having to go live with one of her sisters. So all of that, it helped shape me. And I haven't forgotten what those struggles were. And even becoming an adult and having to help my mom because she would be sick, or the medical bills were just so just not sustainable at all. And then experiencing my son, my oldest son, he's my second child, but my oldest son, when he was a junior in high school, he went to go get his regular football physical, and my husband took him, no big deal. I'm the emergency contact. I get a call saying he was in kidney failure and that we needed to get him to children. It's like, what happened at the physical?
Yeah.
And my husband was like, well, they said his knee was swollen, but he had torn his MCL in wrestling the season before. So that was not unusual. So he didn't think anything about it. 5 years of dialysis, a kidney transplant, good job, good insurance, still medical bills. So again, that's a reminder. I have good insurance. We have jobs. What about the person, which was often my mom, who doesn't have what I have? And that's who I'm fighting for. It comes full circle to humanize the membership. I remember at my old credit union who going through a similar plight as my son and going to the same dialysis center. And just he's stressed about everything. And someone says to him, I can't say names because of HIPAA or what have you, but just look on this credit union's website, and there's going to be somebody that can help you. And he looked, he saw me, and he figured it was me, gave me a call, and he told me his story, and I said, well, can I share something with you? And I told him my son's story, and he goes, now I know why they told me to look and see. And it was simple as he got dialysis Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I said, oh, are we calling you on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? And he goes, yes. And I said, oh my gosh, you're in dialysis fog. And he goes, exactly. And I said, okay, I can tell folks not to call you on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they can call you on other days when you're fresh, you're clear-headed, and and that was my human experience, meeting his human experience, serving him in the way that he needed. And so I'm always trying to be an open person, but that story is my favorite because that was definitely two humans coming together to problem solve. And I realize more folks need to understand. Yes, I may have this title, but man, I'm a human just like you are. And I have worries. I have a sick son. I have all the stuff that everyone else. And sometimes as executives, we often put on this front, like we got it all together, and we don't. I like being a human and being a mom. And I normally tell when I go into new employee orientation, I'm a mom, I'm a human, I'm a wife first. Before, when I get out of the bed, that's who I am to the people in this house. Yeah. And then I go to a building where I'm whatever title that I hold. Absolutely. And if I bring that with me, then I can help serve everyone else.
Let me ask you kind of another one of these big picture questions. And you talked about it some, I think, from the technology standpoint and serving the members earlier in the show. But is there something that you think we as credit unions need to do different to stay relevant going forward? You and I both. We don't believe that it's going to, time's not going to stop. There's going to be extra competition from even non-traditional sources. You mentioned Amazon in the backyard, right? Yeah. What do we need to do as credit unions to make sure that we're still relevant, down the road?
Yeah, we definitely have to look at technology in the change differently. And what I mean by the change differently, credit unions, I equate us, we're a lot like hospitals and libraries, right? We like to do things a certain way. And I believe it came out of our select employee groups, right? We serve firemen or police officers or GE, whomever, a certain way. And those were a certain group of people who navigated similarly. But now that most of us are open charter or state chartered or beyond those groups, we have to look at the world differently. And the world does not operate like our groups used to operate. So that means we can't be afraid of technology. We got to watch how, especially if we say we're for DEI, how we use that word risk. We got to watch how we use that. And we have to really, if we're going to lobby, we really have to lobby on regulations around risk, because I think that we are part of the problem in keeping others out in the way we look at credit and trustworthiness and things of that nature. We have to look at that differently. You can't take someone who grew up in a low income situation and probably didn't even have a checking account, let alone a credit card or something
Right.
else,
Yeah.
and expect them to have an 850 FICO score.
Right.
That's silly. We can't do that, or a one at all, score at all in some cases. We have to look at that differently. We're not teaching people how to be different. We're also not allowing people to be human,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I'm going to phrase it this way. We are not allowing everyone to be human. I had a conversation with a colleague, and we were talking about, and we often talk openly about this whole credit journey. And if you are a part of the BIPOC community, and in some cases, women, especially if you're in an older group, this whole credit journey and knowing that you can check all the boxes, but still wondering, am I going to get approved? Or if, and I had a colleague, white male, who said to me, well, but even if you have something on your credit, you can just write a note. I'm like, is that a reality? Does that
Right.
happen for you?
Yeah.
And he goes, wait, you couldn't? I'm like, no, not everyone gets that opportunity. And that's the problem with our credit system.
I will put my own ignorance out there on display right now, but it was not too long ago, and I did not realize this. It was something that Jill taught me, one of many things, but like in my lifetime, women couldn't get loans without a male signature. I mean, I'm 46 years old. That was mind boggling to me that's still. So when you talk about whether it's BIPOC or like, if you just didn't in your lifetime have access, you're probably not like, yeah, I trust that system today. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Like how can I get a good result? So yeah,
exactly.
It's, in my own personal education, the idea of credit has become so like it just what you're saying. I'm so on board with you, with that idea that it's like that's where as financial institutions, we can change that system. We can be part of that change, right? So I love it. I could talk forever on this, but I'd like to, and I appreciate you and your openness, and you're so smart. I'd like to move on to your career journey, though, because I know a lot of people are going to want to know about that. Many people who hope someday to be in the chair that you're in listen to the show, obviously. So first question, you mentioned the military. That's where you started your career. When was that point where you said to yourself, credit unions, that could be a career? Because most of us didn't grow up going, someday I'm going to be a credit unioner, right? So,
yeah, that wasn't even on the agenda whatsoever. And when I think back, I don't even know if I truly understood what a credit union was. I just know I had a credit union account because I was in the military, and I think my stepfather, in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, we could join a credit union. But I didn't really understand what that meant. And it all comes full circle. It's where we started. This was my job at Seattle Credit Union, then Seattle Metropolitan Credit Union, was my first job back after staying at home with my children.
Okay.
So, when we moved back to Seattle area the second time, the military brought us here the first time. Military sent us to Florida. We were living in Florida, and I had been working in human resources while we were in Florida when we got to Florida. Then we got tired of hurricanes and humidity. So we said, you know what? Seattle was not bad. Let's move back to Seattle. So we did. And I get back to Seattle and I have two more kids. don't understand how all four of my kids, a military family, were born here in the Seattle area.
Oh, that's a really interesting coincidence. Oh, holy smokes. Yeah. Something in the water in Seattle for you guys.
Exactly. Only bottled water going out there for. But I'm sorry. So
I love
then
it.
I decided 4 kids in daycare. That's a
Yeah.
lot. And my husband and I are both former police officers, so we're suspicious of everything. So putting our kids in daycare just didn't work for us. We have seen too much in our lives
Yeah.
to work for that. So I decided to stay home with the kids. Our agreement was when the baby went to preschool, that's when I was going to go back to work because I love to work. So I have 3 job offers pending. One at a bakery or something, all human resources. The Supersonics were still in Seattle. So it was an easy decision, right? Of course, we'll go with the Supersonics. I had this nagging feeling that that was not it. And I had the offer from the credit union as well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not it. I think it's the credit union. And I couldn't put an explanation on it. Everybody in my life, including my husband, was like, have you lost your mind? No. The Sonics, we get to go see games. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, it's not it. It's not it. And so I took the job with the credit union and wow, I kind of followed my instincts going forward. When it was opportunity for me to learn something new, I did. When I had the opportunity to get around other folks that had different experiences than I did coming up in the industry. So maybe they came through lending or maybe they came through risk or what have you. I built relationships and just soaked in everything that they said and was open whenever opportunities came to me. I never went, and this is just my personality. I'm not saying other people have to take this stance, but I have never gone into anything with this plan that I'm going to do this, 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 and this. My plan is always to learn everything that's available to me.
Thinking about coming up and coming into the credit union in HR, again, this is one of those questions that I'm sure you had to face. And I know a lot of people listening will probably, again, be like, ooh, often like to get the CEO role, it seems like there's a lot of finance backgrounds. Like not the operation side, not the marketing side, not the tech side. It's like you talked about learning different parts of the credit union, surrounding yourself with, or, learning from others in the credit union. Was that something as you were trying to become the CEO or trying to advance through your credit union career that you had to deal with where it was like, oh, but you don't know the finance stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. In fact, I was told one time I would never be CEO because I didn't come through the branches or finance. I was told that to my face, and I had even no dreams of being a CEO. However, you give me a challenge, then I'm like, okay, just wait and see.
I love
it. I didn't just go after it because of that. But what that did for me is I said, okay, well, that doesn't make sense because that means only certain people will end up in that role.
Yep.
And I think that's aligned with that mentality of, a manager has to know how to do everything. And I do not believe that at all. And I have had been given a hard time within the credit union industry because that was a new philosophy, right? I didn't feel like I had to have done it in the past or that I needed to know how to do it. My philosophy is I need really smart people who know how to do it, and I can let them do their work. Do I need to understand what's happening and what's going on? Absolutely. But I don't need to know how to build the widget. That just doesn't make sense to me. That's micromanaging, and that's not keeping my focus on things strategic. And that's how I navigated to the CEO role, because I think most boards want that person who can see in the future.
Absolutely.
They want that person who recognizes innovation is here. It's always been here. I mean, when the last time you rode a horse and buggy to work? I mean, never. Right?
Nope. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're not stopping, right? Like progress continues. So
exactly.
A question I think will just be fun. Is there either something that people that you've worked with on your teams have heard you say so many times, or for the folks at Verity who are now, you're the CEO, that they're going to be like, we got you. Yep. We can finish that sentence for you.
It's funny that you said that. When I was leaving SCU, there was 2 separate going away Zoom parties where the game was a cahoots of, if you've heard Tonita say any of those things. So awesome. Apparently I got a few.
You got a few of them.
My favorite is, one person says, you haven't thought it through when I say, well, let me push back a little bit. That they need to go back to the drawing board.
You need more answers. That's funny. See, your new team is going to listen to that and go, okay, we got to be ready for that. All right. That's awesome. I love it. Last question here before we kind of move towards the last part of the show. Outside of credit unions, you've talked about your family. What do you do to recharge? I feel like you've talked quite a bit about what that work-life integration looks like for you. So more, there's nothing on the calendar. What are you doing?
So we're in this different, almost empty nesters phase. And, we did the traditional thing because that's what we were taught to do. We got married young and we had kids immediately. So now we're these full adults, not too old, and we get to have a life, right?
Yeah.
And we're figuring that out. Recently, before the pandemic, we were at home and we have a favorite restaurant just right up the street. And we were like, oh man, I could go for their dessert. And then it dawned upon us, well, we could really just
You can, right?
We don't have need for babysitters or anything like that. We could just go and then travel, right? We would, for a while, I got to, book all the kids and make sure. And we were like, well, why are we taking them? They're
your time now. Your time. Yeah.
So we're learning that. And you know what? The best part of it is we moved out of parenting and our kids are our friends, and just having the relationship with them where we've learned not to judge because their decisions may be different than ours. Well, we try. We're learning. Let's say that.
That's a change, right?
We could just laugh and we could just talk, and we just call each other on a regular basis and just talk as adults and just have fun. And then they still know that mom and dad are still here for you if you need us to be there. This is a fun phase of our parent journey. Doesn't mean they don't still need the occasional help. It still doesn't mean, or just money in general, or it doesn't mean that we don't worry. Of course we do. But it's different. It's different. And we're adjusting to that.
I wish you and your husband an enjoyable journey here as you figure out what you like to do, not being full-time parents. How about that? Sounds exciting. So, okay, it wouldn't be the CUInsight Experience without some rapid fire questions. So the questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. So Is there something you said no to that you're sure glad you did? Might be that Supersonics job.
That would be one. But I would tell you the second one, and my husband would amen me, is the constant pressure to move back to the East Coast.
Yeah,
We
okay.
have felt like we've grown so much out here on the West Coast and had so many different experiences that we kind of like the people we are now. And we're glad because we were tempted because we are East Coast through and through. But we were tempted to go back home, but we didn't. We stayed out here, and Seattle is home. I think to our families, we're the weird Seattle people now.
The other coast, those Webbs. Yeah. I just added this back to the podcast because I've been doing it on the CUInsight network that we do with some of the vendors, but I just think it's fun. We all made goofy purchases over the past year. But has there been something that you bought that you didn't know you needed? Now you're like, yeah, I can't live without that.
This has been my husband. Really. This is him.
What has he bought for the house that you're like, I'm sure glad he bought that silly thing or something?
Yes. Toaster, where it has a video. It's called Revolution or something. And it has a picture where it shows the toast going down. It has a dial of what phase the toast is in. It is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
I've never even heard of it. That's fantastic. So
he is a tech guy. So
I was going to say, yeah, he likes his tech. But it comes down to the toaster. That's for sure. So you mentioned the military after high school. What were you like in high school? And was there any memorable trouble that you got yourself into that you're willing to share?
You know what? And now I hope my siblings don't look at this because they would say, I knew it. I told you. And I did go to the military after I attended college. So
okay.
I was always, and I say this because I always understood education was my way to changing my future. So I was always pretty smart in school, always had good grades. But I was also not afraid of the occasional party or being somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I just knew
growing up
how to hide it well, where my siblings not so much. So my mom thought I was better than I actually was.
That's fantastic. That's good stuff. Is there a book that either you've gifted or that you just think everybody should read?
You know what? I was thinking about this question because I have so many that I think, and I can't say one.
Okay.
So I put the books out here.
Okay. Awesome.
One, it depends on what your journey is in a moment. Bell Hooks, All About Love. When you really want to learn how to, this is my perspective, the words help me walk in empathy. It's one thing to say you have it, but when you truly understand what love means, and love can take any kind of form, and just the love of humanity, Bell Hooks. I love it. How to be an anti-racist is another one. That takes I'm not blaming you personally.
Yep, right.
We're talking about the whole system that we both grew up in, right?
Absolutely.
So there are some things that I have to unlearn too. And I think that does a beautiful job of talking about that and getting folks who feel defensive or feel like they're being called a racist to understand, no, it's not about that at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I think that's been mentioned on the show a couple different times. That's a good one for sure. The question that I don't send in advance. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind?
Oh, gosh. That would be my granddad. And I'm going to try not to cry.
Why?
My grandfather had to quit school. It was between the 3rd and the 5th grade to take care of his family. But when he died, he owned his own small business And this was a business he started when it was illegal for him to even own a business as a Black man.
Wow.
And just the things that he went through the Jim Crow era, civil rights era, to take care of his family. And he was the person that encouraged me the most. I've always been different than maybe my mom or my aunts, and I just saw the world differently.
Yeah.
And he made it okay to see the world differently.
Yeah,
it's him for me. It will always be him.
That's fantastic. And that's the way that I was planning on wrapping up the show, but I accidentally skipped a question that I do want to ask you. What's the best album of all time?
Oh, you know what? My husband and I were debating this before.
It's a fun question, right? Yeah.
You know, for me right now, and it's probably because it's the journey that I've been on in the last few years, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Oh my goodness,
probably
that's a
the
good one.
best right now.
What did your husband say? Now I have to ask.
He agreed.
Oh, did he? Oh my gosh, that's a fantastic.
He also thought the Ready or Die Biggie album, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna say I'm ready to die. No.
All right. That's so funny.
But then I thought, well, it depends on the era, but I would tell you what ushered me into when I went to college is, this is my moment to change the direction of my life. And it is like the worst title for what I do for a living, but it represents my independence. And it's BDP's first album, Criminal Minded. I'm not a criminal.
You're not a criminal. No one thinks that.
But that was it was playing into all summer. And when I got to campus, that was like the album that was being played. And it just reminds me of stepping into me outside of my mom, my aunts, and everyone else. Here is the time for me to be me. And we're old school hip hop heads.
That's fantastic. I just was listening to that Lauryn Hill album recently again because I hadn't in a while, and I think it was just named on one of the lists of like top 10 albums of all times or something like that. So it's still so good. Anyway, thank you again, my friend. I want to be respectful of your time. We will link to everything that we talked about in the show notes today. Is there, a way that you want people to reach out to you if they have more questions of you or to connect? Email, Twitter, LinkedIn. What's your poison?
I'm on it all.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is probably the best because I do check that regularly. Twitter, I check it. It's so many avenues now.
Right. No, I'm with you on
LinkedIn. I mean, not LinkedIn, Instagram.
And Instagram. Oh, all right. We'll have to connect there too. So anyways, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day and I know it's a busy schedule right now. You have a lot going on. But a little bit, but thank you for doing this and being a guest on the show. This has been so much fun. I can't wait till we can, actually see each other in person again when we're all moving about. So thank you, Tonita, and have a great day. Be well, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Before we go, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you for listening today and allowing us to have this much fun doing what we do. And once again, a big thank you also to Tonita for taking time to share her experiences with all of us. We recorded this as she was taking over the helm at Verity, so I very much appreciate her making the time for us today. And a big thank you to our sponsor, PSCU. Our friends at PSCU have been a longtime partner and supporters of ours, so please make sure to click on their link in the show notes and give them some love. See everything they have going on to help out the credit union community. Two last things. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. The list goes on. We're there. And then finally, again, thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great day. Be well, friends.